Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Mini Paint Mitch. Today we're painting up Obi Wan from Star Wars Shatterpoint. He's a great looking miniature and an iconic character, so let's get into it. You can find this miniature in the expansion with Cody and the clones. He's pretty easy to build, and I've already gone ahead and primed this guy. I am going to make one adjustment to this. So I'm just taking a pure white here and just hitting some areas of his armor on his arms and legs. And I'm also getting the armor on his chest as well. And then jumping straight in with some coal black. And I'm applying this to all of the kind of underrobes under the armor. So around his legs here. And getting the section on his chest, under the arms, and the elbows as well. And I'm just taking the pure white and tidying up some of the areas of overspill. For the armor, I'm going to be using the same recipe that I did in my Stormtrooper video, which I will link below. So if you want a more detailed tutorial on how to do that, please feel free to check out that video if you haven't already. And I'll put the recipe on screen just for a quick refresher here. And I'm taking a damp brush and just pulling away some of that wash from the main surface areas. Okay, so here's the white I've been using. And once that wash is dry, I'm just using this white to just edge highlight some of these areas of the armor. I'm not too concerned with getting everything, I'm just picking out certain areas that I feel like needs a highlight. So particularly around the chest here, along the collar, and the shoulders. I'm also getting some of the bigger areas on the back of his leg. Again, these are really just sketchy, quick highlights. I'm not too concerned with wet blending or anything like that. And while I still had the white out, I'm just prepping the lightsaber. And now we're using some dark wood speed paint, and I'm just applying this to the belt. Very thick coverage, just quick and easy. And for the robes, we're going to be using Zandri dust. So I'm just base coating all the robes, and I'm making sure just to get a nice even coverage. And now to shade this, we're going to use Sand Golem. And what I should have done is maybe water this down just a little bit more with some Speedpaint Medium. This is just pure Sand Golem going on here, and it was just a tad too dark. But that's okay, because we can fix that with some more base coat in a minute. And I forgot the gloves from earlier, so I'm just going back with some of this black and getting those. So getting back to the robes, I switched out to the Zandri dust again, and I'm reapplying this back onto most of the robe area. I'm being quite bold with the highlights on the robes here. I want to kind of stay true to that animated theme with these miniatures. So these are just sketchier than normal. For the highlight, I'm going to be using Morghast bone. And I'm hitting some key areas on the robes, mainly just focusing on the ridges here. And around the back of the robes, I'm just staying close to the top side of the ridge. And I'm going even brighter still with some deck tan. I'm just making sure to limit myself to just some smaller areas along that ridge. I'm also focusing most of the highlights to the upper part of the chest and back as well. And it's at this point I've decided that that initial sand golem was probably a little too dark, so I've gone back in with Zandri dust and I'm just reducing it down in some of those bigger areas. And here's just some pure white that I'm just adding to the very smallest parts of the robes here. For the pauldron crest, we're going to be using some Mephiston red, and I've watered this right the way down just to almost a milky consistency, and you can see I'm just doing a little dab here and letting the sculpt just soak up that detail. And we're going to get started on the face. So this is Bugman's Glow as the base coat. I'm making sure to get the neck and his ears and the face on the front. I'm using a white to tidy up any overspill, as I'm going to be using a contrast paint on his beard and hair. So I just want to make sure that that is the purest color it can be. And speaking of, we're going to be using hardened leather. And this comes out as kind of a reddish brown, which is really good for brown haired characters. And I'm just applying a single coat of this to the hair and the beard. And then I'm tidying up that crest with some of the pure white again. I always like to attempt eyes on miniatures, and these sculpts are really good for that. So this is just a dab of black here, and then some light grey for the white of the eyes. And then I tidy it up with some of that initial Bugman's Glow if I get any overspill. The trick is that we're at such an early stage that you just have to keep going back and forth. If you don't like it, just recode it and try again. And once I'm happy with those, we're going to be using pink flesh as the highlight. So I'm just going around and adding some pink flesh to the main areas of the face. And then rather than highlighting with white, I'm actually mixing in that deck tan. The ivory works really well with the pink flesh. And so I'm using that as my highlights, which I'm just adding on some key areas like the nose, the the forehead, the ears, that kind of thing. And then my final highlight on the face will just be a deck tan. I'm using some of that hardened leather again, and I'm just very carefully adding some eyebrows and just letting the brush catch the ridge of his brow. And then for some hair highlights, we're going to be using Skrag brown. And again, just letting the side of the brush catch these ridges on the hair. And yep, you've guessed it, deck tan again. I've mixed this in with some of the Skrag brown, and then I'm using that peach color to help increase the highlights here. And then I'm going back to the Morghast bone, and I'm just using this as a kind of nice yellow highlight for his hair. For the lightsaber, we're going to be using some sky blue. And I've mixed it with some white, quite a lot of white. This is very, very hint of blue here, and I'm just applying this as my first kind of gradient on the lightsaber. I'm going to be building up in color to pure sky blue. So this is kind of a really kind of neon blue here. And then eventually on the very end of the lightsaber, I'll be using a pure sky blue. And I was at a bit of a crossroads here. I was really happy with the face, but I really wanted to add some of that blue glow from the saber. So I decided to bite the bullet and try some object source lighting. This is some of that really pale blue again, and I'm just applying this to the white parts of the armor first. And now comes the tough bit. It's the face. And so this is initially some sky blue mix on my palette here. The trouble is with blue glows, you end up running the risk of them looking a little bit like Smurfs. So what I ended up doing, which I actually really like, is I was mixing that blue into the base tone of the flesh, the Bugman's glow and the pink flesh. I was just mixing blue into that and then building up highlights on the face like I would normally, but with these blue tones instead. And anytime I wanted to do the next stage of highlight, I would just add more white to that blue tone. And I'm pretty happy with the result. It definitely was like a lot of push and pull, and there would be moments of me just starting again, just covering the whole face in blue and then starting again. But just keep at it, keep trying, and you'll get to a point where you're happy with it. This is just some white here. I'm just adding a little bit more white highlight to the armor. I still had some of that armor mix mixed up on the palette, so I'm using this as a wash for the lightsaber. I just added a little bit more water to it. And then using a dark blue mix that was still on the palette, I just added some highlights to the gloves and any of the black areas that are exposed here from the armor. So for the rocks under his foot, initially this was some of that hardened leather. It was just a little too orange for my liking, so I do end up going back and fixing this in a minute. And I'm trying to keep all my Shatterpoint bases fairly uniform, so this is my normal recipe. This is Skrag brown. I also wanted to add just a little bit of reflected light from the ground here, so this is a very watered down Skrag brown. and then I'm just using the brush just to mop up some of that excess. But I like the way it kind of reflects as if he's in sunlight. And then for any of the metallic parts of the bases, I do a dark grey. And then I follow that up with kind of a light ash grey dry brush. For any of the sandy areas of the base, I use Iroko here, and I just dry brush this on very quickly. And as I said earlier, now looking at the base, I was like, yeah, it's a little too orange. So this is some of that dark wood speed paint. I've watered it down just a hair with some of the Speedpaint Medium, and I'm just applying this in a couple of layers. I'm going to be finishing out the metal area with a pure white dry brush. And then anytime there's a split base like this, or some debris, I like to use some pigment. So this is Burnt Rust from AK, and these pigments can be quite messy, and you also have to make sure that your base is dry by this point. You can't have any washes or anything because it will mix back into a paint. And this is just a very quick application of some dust here, and some fairly medium pressure just to get that to stick. And then finally, paint to the rim black. And there you have it, General Kenobi for the battlefield, ready to go. This one was really fun. This was a bit of a learning experience, which is always good. Especially object source lighting is something that eludes me quite a lot, so this is really fun to like really push my limits there. I also got some reflected light from the base, which is always really fun. This is a difficult pose because his saber does cover half of his face, but it is a great looking miniature. A big thank you to everybody who's watching these videos. I've had some really nice and awesome comments so far, so thank you. Feel free to like the video, that really does help out young YouTubers like myself, and I will see you in the next one.